I'm sending this to your blog because I don't know where else to put it. I tried telling it as a funny camping story at work, and people laughed at the raccoon part, which is fair, but nobody understood the other part. The part where it felt like there was a rule everybody knew except us. This happened last summer on a family camping trip. It was me, my wife, and our 2 kids. We went to a state park campground a few hours from home, the kind with numbered sites and little wooden posts and a metal fire ring. It wasn't remote. It was full. Families, a couple groups of retirees in big fifth wheels, and one group of teenagers with lanterns that never seemed to turn off. We had a basic tent, not fancy, with 2 zipper pulls that meet in the middle. We set up before dark. I did the usual stuff. Checked the seams, staked it down, made sure the rainfly was tight, and put our backpacks and food in the car like the park sign said. We kept only what we needed in the tent: sleeping bags, clothes, headlamps, and a small backpack with things we might want in the night. That backpack had my wife's medicine, the kids' inhalers, wipes, and yes, snacks. Not like a full pantry, just the kind of snacks you use to get a kid back to sleep. Our campsite was close to others. If you stood at our picnic table, you could see the glow of 2 other fire rings through the trees, and you could hear normal stuff. People zipping tents, closing car doors, talking low, a baby crying once, then quiet. We went to sleep with the usual campground sounds. Sometime later, it got silent in a way that woke me up. Not loud silent like when something big happens, just like the small noises stopped all at once. The insects were still there, but the human sounds were gone. I remember lying there with my eyes open, waiting for a reason. Then I heard the zipper. Not the whole zipper ripping open fast. Slow, deliberate clicks, like someone trying not to snag it. The zipper pulls on our tent are metal, and I could hear that soft scrape when they moved. My first thought was that one of the kids was messing with it in their sleep. Then our oldest sat up and whispered, "Dad?" And my youngest started crying before fully waking up. The zipper moved again. The tent door wasn't all the way open, but the seam loosened at the bottom like a mouth. A small shape pressed from the outside, making a bulge in the fabric. I watched it like I couldn't process it. Something slid a hand through. It looked like a tiny hand. 5 skinny fingers, black and gray, moving fast but careful. It didn't wave around. It went straight toward the small backpack we had shoved near our feet. My wife gasped and grabbed the backpack, pulling it toward her like it was a purse in a parking lot. The kids started screaming. Not whining, actual screaming, the kind that makes your skin go cold. I lunged for the door and slapped at the hand. It pulled back, and the zipper started moving again, opening wider like it had learned from the first try. That was the moment when it stopped being a normal camping nuisance and started feeling like a person on the other side. It wasn't just rummaging, it was operating the tent. I got my headlamp on and shined it at the opening. A raccoon's face appeared, close enough to see the wet nose and the mask markings. It blinked and didn't run right away. It shoved its arm back in, reaching for the backpack again. I yelled and smacked the tent wall hard with the flat of my hand. The raccoon finally backed off. I heard it shuffle away through the leaves. The kids kept crying. My wife kept saying, "It's just a raccoon, it's just a raccoon," like she was saying it for herself too. I told the kids the same thing. I told them raccoons have hands like that. I believed that. I still believe it. Here's the part that doesn't fit. Nobody around us reacted. When the kids screamed, I expected other parents to call out, or a zipper to open, or a flashlight beam to sweep through the trees. We were packed in close. Sound carries in a campground. Our kids were loud. I stepped outside with my headlamp and looked both ways down the loop. The nearest tents were dark and still. No movement, no voices, not even the little noises you hear when someone wakes up and turns over. Across from us, a big camper had its windows blacked out. The teenage group's lantern glow was still visible through their screen shelter, but it didn't flicker like someone had stood up. No one asked if we were okay. I walked to the edge of our site and called out, "Hey, sorry, raccoon in our tent," because I didn't want anyone thinking something else was happening. I said it loud. Nobody answered. Nobody even coughed. My wife asked me if I thought people had left. They hadn't. We had seen them all evening. We had waved. A couple had complimented our kids' glow sticks. The retirees had offered us extra firewood. Those people didn't vanish. I checked the car and made sure it was locked. I moved the backpack with the medicine into the car too. We got the kids settled back down, but they didn't sleep. They stared at the tent door and jumped at every rustle. I stayed awake listening. About the time you'd normally check your phone for the hour, I heard the zipper again. Same slow clicks, same careful pace. The tent door hadn't been fully closed after the first time because I was afraid of jamming it, but I had pulled the zipper pulls back to the top as far as they would go. The zipper moved anyway. It didn't make sense at first. The pulls were at the top. The sound came from lower down, near the floor. It was like something was starting from the bottom seam and moving upward. The fabric puckered and a point pressed in. A hand slid in again, not a paw pushing through a gap, fingers gripping the edge and pulling, working the opening wider. I hit the headlamp and leaned forward. Raccoon, same mask face. It had its forearm inside like a person reaching under a door. It went straight to where the backpack had been, then hesitated, confused, and started pawing at the sleeping bag near my feet. I yelled. It didn't bolt immediately. It withdrew the arm, and the zipper moved back the way it had come, like it was closing itself. Click, 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 the door sealing up. That's when my wife started crying. Not loud, just quiet tears, because the thing had not only opened our tent, it had closed it. I unzipped the door fast and stepped out with the headlamp sweeping. The raccoon was a low shape near the picnic table, moving away, then it disappeared under the brush. I followed the sound for a few steps and stopped. I wasn't going to chase a raccoon at night in sandals. I looked at the nearest campsite again. Still nothing. A line of dark tents, a closed camper door, no flashlights. It felt staged, like everyone had decided not to acknowledge any noise after a certain point. Back in the tent, I tried to reset things like a checklist. I checked the zipper track with my fingers. It was intact. I made sure the pulls were both together at the very top and clipped them with a small carabiner I had on my keychain. It wasn't a lock, but it would make it harder to separate them. We didn't sleep. We lay there listening. The kids eventually dozed off in short bursts, then woke up at every small sound. The zipper started again later. Slow clicks, steady rhythm. The carabiner rattled once, then twice, like something testing it. The tent wall pressed inward. I grabbed the zipper pulls through the fabric and held them. My wife held the headlamp ready. A hand pushed at the seam, but it couldn't get a gap. It switched tactics. It moved along the bottom edge, feeling for a weak point. It wasn't random. It was methodical. Then it stopped. Not like it gave up, but like it completed a check and moved on. I stayed frozen, waiting for the next attempt. Instead, we heard it at the next campsite over. A zipper, the same slow click pattern, not the fast rip of a kid getting out to use the bathroom. Then a pause, then another zipper, then another, going down the loop, each one starting after the previous one stopped. I sat up and listened hard, trying to decide if I was projecting. I wasn't. The sounds were distinct. A series one after another, like a person trying doors. There were no screams from those tents, no shouts, no, "Hey!" No running footsteps, just the zippers, the short pauses, and the faint rustle of something moving through leaves. My wife whispered, "Why isn't anybody saying anything?" I didn't have an answer. In the morning, everything looked normal. People came out, coffee smells, kids on bikes. The retirees waved like nothing happened. The teenage group was laughing. I walked over to the nearest family, a dad I had chatted with at the water spigot the day before. I asked, as casually as I could, if they had any trouble with raccoons overnight. He looked at me for a long second, then said, "They get bold here," and changed the subject to the weather. That was it, no follow-up. No, "Are your kids okay?" No, I heard screaming. He kept his voice low, like he didn't want to carry. I tried again with the retirees when we passed on the way to the restroom. I said, "Did you hear anything weird last night? We had a raccoon unzip our tent." The woman gave a tight smile and said, "Lock up your food," and kept walking. The man didn't look at me. At the campground bulletin board, there was a laminated notice about wildlife. It was the usual advice. But there was also a handwritten note on plain paper pinned underneath, no signature. It said, "If you hear it working a zipper, do not call out, do not unzip, wait until it leaves." I stared at that note for a while. Someone had taken the time to write it and pin it where people would see it. If it was a joke, it was a weird one. If it was serious, it meant this had happened enough times for someone to develop a rule. We left that afternoon. My wife wanted to stay because the kids had been excited for the trip, but after the note, she didn't argue. In the car, the kids kept asking why nobody helped. I told them people probably didn't hear, which wasn't true, and they knew it. On the way out, we passed the camp host site. I considered stopping. I didn't. I don't have a good reason. Part of it was embarrassment about making a big deal out of a raccoon. Part of it was that note. Do not call out. Like calling out was what made it worse. I've thought about that a lot since then. The raccoon was real. The tiny hand was a raccoon's hand. But the pattern wasn't normal animal behavior. It was the zipper work, the closing, the testing of the carabiner, and then the sequence moving from tent to tent. The other part that sticks with me is the silence. It wasn't just that no one came to check on us. It was the feeling that everyone was actively participating and not reacting, like a campground etiquette rule that had hardened into something else. Since then, my oldest refuses to sleep in a tent. If we're in a cabin, they want the door latched and a chair under the handle. My youngest asks, every time we zip a jacket, if something can unzip it from the outside. I'm sending this because I keep thinking about that handwritten note and the way the zipper sounds carried, one campsite after another, with nobody saying a word. I don't know if it was always raccoons, or if it was something people call raccoons because that's easier. I only know what I saw and heard. If anyone reading this camps at that park, or any park where you hear a zipper moving slow at night, I want to know if you've seen the note too, or if you've noticed the same thing where everybody stays quiet. We're not going back to prove anything. But I also don't like the idea that we stumbled into a rule and broke it by screaming.